Did you ever wonder why Trump was the one who had to deal with an FBI raid for the documents when Joe Biden was able to voluntarily hand over all of his classified documents? Kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? An unbelievable blockbuster story coming from Michael Schellenberger. You'll remember him. He, along with Matt Taibbi, won investigative journalist awards for their work on the Twitter files. And now, frankly, this is even bigger. You know, the Russian collusion story that paralyzed the Trump presidency was a hoax. We know that after the tens of millions of dollars that was spent on the Robert Mueller investigation that led to nothing having to do with Russian collusion. You know that story was nothing. It was made up. It was a creation of the Hillary Clinton campaign, right? They paid for the Steele dossier that had all those lies in it that ended up triggering an FBI counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign and eventually the Trump administration. It led to illegal FISA warrants where members of the FBI and Justice Department lied to the court to obtain those special warrants that allowed the FBI to spy on U.S. citizens under the guise of national security threats. You know all of that already. But what we've now learned, what we've now had confirmed, is this all started in the office of Barack Obama and his CIA director, John Brennan. Let's not forget something here. All of this story happened when Barack Obama was president and Joe Biden was vice president. So we're going to begin by asking a very simple question. What did Barack Obama know? And when did he know it? What did Joe Biden know? And when did he know it? Michael Schellenberger has now revealed that there are multiple sources close to the House Intelligence Committee that have revealed that the CIA asked Australia, England, New Zealand, and Canada, 4 of the 5 members of the Five Eyes, the U.S., we're the 5th member. The CIA asked those countries to spy on 26 American citizens who were connected to the Trump campaign. You see, it would be illegal for the CIA to spy on members of the Trump campaign. So they asked these countries to do their dirty work. And then they specifically asked them to interact with these people and find out what dirt they could, report back to the CIA. That information then found its way into the Steele dossier in the hands of the FBI, and that started the entire Crossfire Hurricane investigation. All of these roads lead back to President Barack Obama. Here's how Jesse Waters framed the story last night and his interview with Michael Schellenberger.
Brand new details about how Obama's CIA targeted Trump and started the entire Russia hoax. For years, we were told that tips from an Australian diplomat tipped off the FBI after a random conversation with Papadopoulos, a no-name 20-something. But according to new reporting by Michael Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi, the whole thing was a CIA setup. Former CIA Director John Brennan identified 26 Trump associates to be targeted by the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, and then those interactions were the targets and were targeted by the FBI as suspicious. And that's how the FBI launched the Russia collusion hoax. The details of this entire operation have been stored in a top secret binder in a secret room in Washington. Trump ordered the whole thing declassified. And now the rumor is that the binder might be missing. Joining me now, one of the reporters who broke the story, Michael Schellenberger. Michael, explain how this all started with the CIA picking these 26 Trump people.
Yeah, good to be with you, Jesse. Well, obviously, this is an extremely serious story and serious allegation by multiple credible sources that Public and Racket, that's Matt Taibbi's publication, have spoken to. These are people that are close to the House intelligence investigation of how the Russia collusion hoax began. The story, as you mentioned, was that, we were just informed by foreign intelligence about this. Our sources tell us a very different story, which is that this was initiated by the U.S. government. It came from within the U.S. government's intelligence community, including the CIA, that they asked the so-called Five Eyes nations intelligence agencies, that's the other English-speaking nations, including Britain and Australia, to spy on 26 Trump associates, or at least they had a list of the 26 associates that were identified. This is new information. Some people have theorized about this and speculated about it. We feel very confident that our sources were in a position to know and are very credible in this report. And it's obviously a very serious allegation because this is illegal spying and it's illegal election interference.
Okay, so you're reporting that the CIA got these allies to bump these 26 Trump associates, create interactions, and then call these interactions suspicious and let the FBI know they were suspicious. And that starts the whole thing. What about this binder that encapsulates this whole thing and no one knows where it is right now, or Trump has it? What's that?
Well, Jesse, we'll have a piece tomorrow that is specifically about the binder, but as a friend of the show and of yours on this, I'll say that there has been widespread speculation that this binder was the reason or a reason for the FBI raid of Mar-a-Lago, and we'll be discussing that tomorrow. But obviously, if this binder contains what we have been told that it contains, which may include raw intelligence, information showing that the U.S. government, the CIA and the intelligence community of the U.S. government, initiated the Russia collusion hoax, that it did not occur in the way that the official story, including the Durham investigation, had portrayed it, then that's extremely serious information. And it may be, if the FBI then went to go get it in order to continue the cover-up of this information, that obviously adds an even more dramatic wrinkle to this. Again, we'll have more to say about it tomorrow, but this is a huge, huge story. I mean, I've been thinking about it in the history of the United States of America. Have we ever had something like this where the intelligence community was weaponized against a political candidate and using our foreign allies to do it? I can't think of a more important or dramatic story.
When we went to air, we checked Mr. Schellenberger's account on X, and he had not yet revealed anything about that binder. We're keeping an eye on it. But understand it, and by the way, with all due respect, Mr. Schellenberger, the real difference here is that they asked our allies, our foreign allies, to assist them in this surveillance. But I think it's been pretty proven now that our intelligence agencies have, in fact, spied on American political candidates. The difference here is that Barack Obama's CIA asked our allies to do it for them and then initiate this whole thing. You'll remember that the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, the counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign, began, we were told, because George Papadopoulos, who was an unpaid advisor listed on the Trump campaign website for certain foreign policy issues in the Middle East, we were told that an Australian diplomat reported to the CIA that this guy, George Papadopoulos, was in a bar in London bragging about how the Trump campaign had acquired Hillary Clinton's emails from Russia. You remember that? And so the FBI, James Comey and everybody, Peter Strzok, like, well, we had no choice. I mean, we get that kind of information from our ally, from the Australians, then we have to take it seriously. So we had to initiate investigation. We were just doing our job. We were just trying to protect our country. We were trying to help Trump, they used to say. If he really had a mole in his campaign, he should have wanted to know about it. Of course, forget the fact that they never actually informed Donald Trump that they were spying on his campaign. If they were really trying to help him, you'd think they would have let him know, right? Giving him a heads up. Hey, you might want to watch out. But they never did, because that was all a lie. That was all a lie. Take a look at this graphic. This is part of Michael Schellenberger's report. The person on the left is Ambassador Joseph Mifsud. That guy is the Australian diplomat. The guy in the middle is George Papadopoulos. And the guy on the right, you remember this guy? Stephen Halper. He's the guy who actually reached out to George Papadopoulos in London, initiated a friendship with him. He got him to the bar that night. Stephen Halper, that guy was an FBI asset. The FBI paid him to do that. Here's something else that's new and breaking that we just learned. That guy in the middle, George Papadopoulos, the center of this entire story, he'll be a special guest on this program tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. He'll be telling his story and his reaction to all of these new revelations. Can I just remind you the question that we started with and what we need to keep asking? This is not old news. This is not, oh, who cares? It's back in 2016. Let's move on. This is not, something that isn't relevant to today. And by the way, this isn't even about James Comey or even Hillary Clinton. This is all about Barack Obama. This all happened under Barack Obama's watch. Frankly, it all happened at Barack Obama's direction. He, his CIA director, John Brennan, his director of national intelligence, James Clapper, they were all in the middle of this. And there's one other figure that knew everything about this and was part and parcel to it. That would be the vice president under Barack Obama. That would be Joe Biden. We also know him as the big guy. And Joe Biden and the big guy were back in the news again yesterday because Tony Bobulinski, Hunter Biden's former business partner, testified to the House Oversight Committee. Now, the transcript was released. We don't actually have the video of it. But luckily, we actually have some video of Tony Bobulinski from 3 years ago, before the 2020 presidential election, when he came public with all of this stuff, when he granted an interview to Tucker Carlson and told everything about how Joe Biden, his brother Jim, and his son Hunter were part of an international fraudulent business scheme to sell access illegally to the vice president of the United States. Of course, it didn't get much coverage because the media blacklisted the entire story. They pretended as though this was Russian disinformation. And why did they do that? Well, because the very same people that lied to you in 2016 about Russian collusion were also lying to you in 2020 about the Hunter Biden laptop story, claiming that it was Russian disinformation. We know that's not true now either. That was a hoax as well. Everything in the Hunter Biden laptop story is legitimate, including all of those emails that had this man's name on it, Tony Bobulinski. Here he was telling his story.
Involved in various successful businesses, both in this country and abroad. I'm making this statement to set the record straight about the involvement of the Biden family, Vice President Biden, his brother Jim Biden, and his son Hunter Biden in dealings with the Chinese. I've heard Joe Biden say that he's never discussed business with Hunter. That is false. I have firsthand knowledge about this because I directly dealt with the Biden family, including Joe Biden. I have also heard that Vice President Biden said on Tuesday that Senator Ron Johnson, the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, should be ashamed for suggesting that Biden family sought to profit from their name. Well, here are the facts I know, and everything I'm saying is corroborated by emails, WhatsApp chats, agreements, documents, and other evidence. And the American people can judge for themselves. I brought, I guess, for record, 3 phones that spanned the years 2015 through 2018. These phones have never been held by anybody else besides myself. I was told this past Sunday by somebody who was also involved in this matter that if I went public this information, it would bury all of us, man. The Bidens included. I have no wish to bury anyone. I've never been political. The few contributions I have made have been to Democrats. But what I am is a patriot and a veteran.
That's right, a veteran of the United States Navy, and he seems pretty believable and pretty compelling, but only a handful of people who watch Fox News or alternate media outlets and the new media, digital media, like right here at Town Hall. You all saw this. You all knew this. And now, finally, Tony Bobulinski yesterday testified to the House Oversight Committee, and now they knew about it as well. A lot of that testimony, we're told, based on the transcripts we saw, had to do with James Biden, the brother of the President of the United States. I want to show you one part of the Tucker Carlson interview that focused on James Biden because it's critically important. This is the scheme that they put together. This whole idea that they could sell access to the vice president, make millions, tens of millions of dollars from hostile nations like Russia, China, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, etc., corrupt governments that all wanted access to the vice president and business with the vice president. They put together the entire scheme, and they were sure they weren't going to get caught. Why? Well, take a listen to this.
And I should say, and I want to put the document on the screen, in his pitch to the Chinese, in his bio, Jim Biden describes himself as an advisor, a current advisor to his brother. So was it clear to you from the beginning that what Jim Biden was bringing to this deal was his relationship with Joe Biden.
Yeah, 1,000%, crystal clear. After I met with Joe Biden the morning of May 3rd at the Milken conference, and then was taken backstage after Joe had spoken, we joked around for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I walked him out to his car. I think they referenced he was off to see the lieutenant governor.
This is Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, yes.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went over to the Peninsula Hotel and I sat with Jim Biden for 2 hours, where Jim Biden walked through his history and his own words, stating all the work and effort he did to get Joe Biden elected initially in Delaware, and then through the family history and the role that he had played in it. And in that meeting, remember, I'm the son of a naval officer. Was a naval officer myself. And because I held a Q clearance, which is the equivalent of a top secret clearance, we're audited every year. So if you receive a gift, I think the barrier was $25. Anything larger than $25, we had to disclose it to the government, because obviously anybody with the clearance, the government is watching closely that they're not influenced by the Russians, the Iranians, the Chinese, and stuff like that. So as I was listening to Jim walk through this, I have a big heart. If you talk to anybody who knows me, they would weigh in on that. I'm a kind person, and I'm thinking about the Biden family. Like, how are they doing this? I know Joe decided not to run in 2016, but what if he ran in the future? Aren't they taking political risk or headline risk? And I remember looking at Jim Biden and saying, how are you guys getting away with this? Like, aren't you concerned? And he looked at me and he laughed a little bit and said, plausible deniability.
He said that out loud?
Yes, he said it directly to me, one-on-one in a cabana at the Peninsula Hotel after about a hour and a half, 2-hour meeting, with me asking out of concern, how are you guys doing this? Aren't you concerned that you're going to put your brother's future presidential campaign at risk? The Chinese, the stuff that you guys have been doing already in 2015 and 2016 around the world. And I just can almost picture his face where he sort of chuckles and says, plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. Just deny it. Just deny it. I mean, put the pieces together here. We've seen President Joe Biden confronted about these things over and over and over again throughout his political career, especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And what does he do? Every single time someone confronts him on the facts, confronts him. Hey, Tony Bobulinski just said this. Hey, the emails say that. Hey, the text messages say that. Hey, the laptop has this in it. Hey, there's evidence of cash checks coming from foreign governments. What about this? What about this? And what does Joe Biden do every single time? Every single time.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about the overseas business dealings.
And so how do you know?
Here's what I know. I know Trump deserves to be investigated.
There you go. Yeah. Deniability. Just deny it, deny it, deny it. Never happened, never done it, never talked to him, never exchanged anything, never knew anything about his business. But the problem is Trump, with the finger pointing and the yelling and the rage. And just keep denying it. Deny it, deny it, deny it, deny it until you can't deny it anymore. Until the media gets bored with it. Until reporters think that it's yesterday's news. Until it just looks like Republicans are acting politically instead of actually serving the American people. And just keep denying it. That's all you can do. And it certainly fits what Tony Bobulinski just said he heard. It certainly fits with their behavior, doesn't it? What we're learning about the testimony under oath behind closed doors, Miranda Devine of the New York Post is reporting on it. She's the author of that article that was lied about by the intelligence community. Saying that it was Russian disinformation. She's a New York Post reporter. Tony Bobulinski, from my direct personal experience, it's clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand being sold by the Biden family. His family's foreign influence peddling operation from China to Ukraine and elsewhere sold out to foreign actors who were seeking to gain influence and access to Joe Biden and the United States government. Joe Biden was more than a participant in and beneficiary of his family's business. He was an enabler, despite being buffered by a complex scheme to maintain plausible deniability. You know what's amazing about this story is that there's only one person throughout it all who has stayed consistent with his story without changing it, without having to correct it, without getting caught in a lie and then having to say, oh, well, without changing it. First, Joe Biden said, I never had anything to do. I never knew anything about my son's business. And then remember, they changed that. And suddenly it was, I was never in business with my son, or I never benefited from the business of my son, because he could no longer deny that he didn't know anything about it, because we had the text messages, we had the pictures, we had the records. See, he keeps changing his story. One person who hasn't changed his story is Tony Bobulinski. And let's watch the video of George Stephanopoulos interviewing Tony Bobulinski. And we can't do that because George wasn't interested in this story. How about the folks at Meet the Press? Can we watch the video of their interview with Tony Bobulinski? We don't have that either. Jake Tapper? No? Isn't it weird that in 3 years, the central figure in this entire thing, a man who just testified and gave all the details, a man whose name is on almost all the emails from Hunter Biden's laptop, Tony Bobulinski, that man is available, but there's only one journalist in the entire nation, the entire world, that cared to interview him, Tucker Carlson, who then eventually lost his job. It's all pretty weird, isn't it? Isn't it? By the way, let's tie all this together, shall we? In 2016, your United States intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI, they investigated a man running for president. They asked foreign countries to spy on 26 individuals working on that man's campaign, Donald Trump. And then they lied about it. They've been lying about it. They continue to lie about it. And that all happened when Barack Obama was president. And then 4 years later, when there was hard evidence that the man who was running for president, Joe Biden, just 2 weeks before the election, this evidence becomes public to everybody. And the central figure speaks out and gives an interview. And all of this evidence that showed that Joe Biden was involved in a crooked business scheme with his brother and his son, illegally selling access to the White House. And that same intelligence community came out with a letter, 51 professionals, saying that the entire thing was Russian disinformation. Not only is Donald Trump lying about this, but he's doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin. They lied in 2016. And they meddled with the election. And they didn't succeed. The American people were smart enough to see through it eventually. And Donald Trump won the presidency. Then they tried to shut down his presidency with a special prosecutor and fake news stories left and right. The most tawdry, horrific, outlandish things that you would ever imagine made their way onto the front page of august newspapers and onto cable news and broadcast news nearly 24/7. They tried to paralyze that administration, and it still ended up giving us a great economy with record low unemployment and peace throughout the world. And then that exact same intelligence community meddled in the election in 2020. They propped up Joe Biden. They killed the story that would have killed his candidacy by saying it was Russian disinformation, lying and saying that Donald Trump was associated with Vladimir Putin and lying to the American people. And they got away with it. And to button the whole thing up, all of the proof, all of the documents that showed what happened during Russian collusion apparently was in Donald Trump's possession in Mar-a-Lago. And the next thing you know, you've got an early morning pre-dawn raid with FBI agents, guns drawn, breaking into a former president's home and confiscating those documents. Did you ever wonder why Trump was the one who had to deal with an FBI raid for the documents when Joe Biden was able to voluntarily hand over all of his classified documents? Kind of makes sense now, doesn't it? It sure as hell does.